How is everybody doing? Good, good, good. Oh, hi, Sammy. Hi, hi. Superb. So let's start. The presentation is pretty straightforward because we're going to be talking about the hacker's perspective on the new risks, and we're going to look into the different decisions that we made, maybe during the pandemic, maybe recently, and whether they are possibly accurate. We're going to compare it with a little bit of statistics, and simply I would love to also show you a bunch of demonstrations presenting where possibly we could encounter some risks in our infrastructure for the maybe upcoming year. As you can see, my name is Paula Januszkiewicz, and what I'm simply doing for a living is cybersecurity. I've been on the market for, it's horrible, 18 years right now. And my company Secure is 14 years. We are literally celebrating on the 2nd of November our 14th anniversary, and at the very beginning I was the only one, but right now I've got almost 50 people on board, which is quite funny because if you ask me how that happened, I don't know, they just came. And at the end, the point is that that kind of proves that cybersecurity is very important. We just needed more people to the team and there's more jobs, so we need more people and more job. And eventually we ended up with this. That also shows basically that cybersecurity, of course, not only is important, but it became a priority for us at many spheres, not only from the, of course, the IT perspective, but also cybersecurity is part of the many processes that we have. For example, if you even attend the marketing Facebook training, there's a module about cybersecurity. Who would expect that? And therefore, that is also one of the priorities. And every solution, there is a cybersecurity factor, and that is what this presentation is about. So, long story short, you can see as well that I'm engaged in many different events, and after every event, also after our event, we always share our tools. So long story short, you can see that you can also download the presentation, get the tools. But of course, I have to say one thing is that when we get into tools, please, this is the QR code to download the tools and the presentation, so please scan it. Ironically, this is a cybersecurity presentation, so good luck with this. But of course, it's always a matter of trust, and if you trust us, you can use the tools, and they are free tools. I can see that not many people after that I said that are actually raising their phones. Don't be afraid. You can trust us. No, just kidding, of course, please. Of course, you'll find here presentation and tools. And I will display this QR code later on. So what we learned, and especially within the last events that were happening, also during the pandemic, but not only, taking into consideration companies like SolarWinds, also looking into the story of a colonial pipeline, we're noticing that one thing, of course, is trust, but another thing is sometimes even misconfiguration. And before we move forward, I would love to share with you one of our favorite stories within the recent time within our team, because this is actually the story about the customer that has been completely smashed by ransomware, and the problem was that they just trusted someone too much. And this is when the problem began, and at the end, unfortunately, they ended up with a completely non-functioning environment with IT people not really engaged and so on. So it's a very interesting experience that we have out there. So the story is that customer simply called us. It's a company that we did not know before, so it's a new one. Hey, we got a problem, we got encrypted, could you please come, and so on. And this was a time of a pandemic where we could not travel. So we all know the drill, that planes were just sometimes operating only if you had some priority to fix. And apparently that was a priority because it wasn't even a country level problem, because this company was producing goods all around the world. It's very like a big brand. You might actually know it. And we had to actually fix all the government paperwork so that when we jump into the plane, into the cars, and so on, driving across Europe, that we are not falling into the quarantine. So that delays a couple of things as well. And in cybersecurity, time definitely matters. So when we arrive on site, finally fixing all of that, Of course, everything is just not working. What they did before we came, they actually cooperated with a negotiation company, just imagine, to pay the ransom to the hackers. So it's really amazing how it's happening nowadays, because hackers actually have a help desk. So you call the number, yeah, and it's like press 7 if you want to pay the ransom. Yeah, someone gets you on the line. There's this nice person on the other side, nothing personal, just business. Just give us money and we're going to decrypt your data. And after that, they paid the ransom. This was €500,000. Quite a lot, yeah? Quite a lot. It's a lot. They got the decryptor, just imagine, that was just not working. Yeah? So what do? Call the help desk again? It's like, hey, apologies, but the software that you gave, it's not working. Yes, it's working. No, it's not working. And then, of course, end of conversation. So this was the moment when they understood that they got a problem, because, again, it was a factory, series of factories producing different goods. And the funny part was, funny not funny, is that they actually had a database where they had a data also introduced from the paperwork from 1960s, that they were relying some decisions on that, and they did not have an appropriate backup of the database. Well, I bet you are thinking right now, it's like, well, then what we are talking about? Yeah, they were kind of asking for it actually to happen, and the point was that once we get the decryptor, what it appeared is that decryptor, of course, was not working, as we observed, but once you get into data that was encrypted and was working actually with almost 1 terabyte database file, which is quite characteristic, so to say. And when I look into the file, I could see that there's this first 8 megabytes that seems to be a trash, and at the end of a file, we had a multiplied 512 byte key. And we are all in IT, we know that 512, it's not a random number. So basically, I could judge by looking into the different files that, hey, here is 512, here is 1024, and then there was just multiplication of that. So I thought, okay, why does it differ? Yeah, so what's the dependency for this? And what it appeared is that hackers were actually quite lazy, and they wrote the ransomware that was just badly working, because when it was getting into the data that was in use, it crashed. And it got to the data, crash. Encrypted part of it, crash. So what it's supposed to do, it's supposed to actually encrypt the first 8 megabytes clearly just once, stick the key, thank you so much. And the middle of the file was actually a clear text. So could we recover in general, because this was also the thought that we had, all this data? I mean, it's a 1 terabyte, so there is for sure something we can recover. Well, it depends really on a file type, because there's lots of integrity in lots of files and so on. So this is absolutely massacre if it's about recovering 1 by 1 file. No, that's not really the case. Of course, for some of the files it's possible, but not really the business case. So at the end, what we did, we fixed the decryptor. So we were actually the hacker's help desk, and we managed to decrypt the data once we understood how many times the ransomware was actually getting into this first 8 megabytes. But see, what was the conclusion at the end was that how often can you be in that kind of situation? Very rare situation. They were pretty lucky. We would not get a decryptor if they did not pay. And I'm not saying, of course, that we should pay. We know the drill. But in this case, it kind of helped. And the problem was, because once we managed to recover data, put them back into the business operation, we decided to jump into forensics so that we learn basically what is going on in this company and why hackers actually managed to get in. And what we learned is that hackers were pretty much immediately domain admins. How come? Is there any vulnerability? What's wrong? And it appeared that hackers actually came through the vendor. So vendor that was managing their infrastructure, they were having full privilege access, they were domain admins, and they were able to, at the end, pretty much take over the infrastructure just like that. And that's the end of the story, which kind of takes us to the idea of trust. So do we actually nowadays verify our vendors? Do we actually figure out what kind of things we are dependent on in our infrastructure. And the reason why I'm saying this is because after that story with the ransomware, we encountered many situations during pandemic when there was a certain company that was operating and then they were either gone, they were in the bankrupt, they were in this, that. In general, they were just not helping that enterprise anymore, supporting their application. So in general, what we've understood is that it is actually a kind of a silent problem that companies are dependent on something, they do not define the dependency, they don't do much about it, and then when the problem appears, they're like, oh shoot, we don't have these developers anymore. Yeah. So just a thought to drop in at the very beginning, because this seems to be quite an interesting perspective on cybersecurity and in general business continuity, because these two things definitely go in pair in the current, I would say, 1 year. So the impact of the cybercrime, when we look into statistics, and these are the statistics from 2022 and 2021 from some of the reports that we're summarizing the year. So the year is not over. I'm kind of explaining myself because I really like to have the fresh ones. But from some of the reports, they are always issued at the end of the year. So here you've got the Data Breach Investigations Report 2022 and some of the stats from Trend Micro, IBM, CSO, FBI, and so on. So you can see that, first of all, 82% of breaches involved the human element in 2021. So human element means that user clicks on a link because there's, for example, a phishing, or there is someone that has simple credentials, and so on. So in general, there's kind of like a human mistake involved in the operation. Yeah. So of course, quite a lot. But on the other hand, that we could say that's fine, humans are not perfect, but when you look at the last statistic, that is a serious problem, because we can see that 77% of organizations, they do not have the incident response plan in place. Yes, kind of like this, and not only that they don't have, but if they have, this is just not a well-tested plan. So here comes, of course, the trend of the tabletop exercises, and testing and looking into our infrastructure from the perspective of being attacked. That always is a good exercise. But the problem is that quite often when we get to an incident, we are seeing, like, not only, of course, the situation is stressful, so we are seeing not a well-prepared team, but also not well-prepared tools. Now, what kind of, let me be ironic for the moment, what kind of makes me think is that when there is an incident, the most often asked question while the customer calls us, and I'm kind of laughing at this, it's not funny, though I find it quite funny, is that when I say, okay, so we've got an incident, would you mind collecting the evidence first? It doesn't take too much. First we do the memory dump, then we do the disk dump. Okay, how difficult is this? This is so easy. It has to be easy, because when our hands are shaking, you just need to have a tool that you click that does the memory dump, stores it on the external media, and that's it. This is how simple that is. Yeah? So you can use many tools for that. For example, FTK Imager, very popular, free from Access Data, which is actually used also by government too. So it's just like, it's just simple. It doesn't take too much. Now, when we get into that process, this is already difficult, because the first question I get is, oh, so we need an external media. Yeah? Within the whole infrastructure on fire. You know, there are these memes that you've got like this teddy bear and with the Mac, and there's like a fire behind, and he says, everything is fine. Yeah. So this is exactly this. And then they ask the question, how big is supposed to be this media? And I'm saying, how much memory you've got? And they're like, oh, 32 gigs. So then you need a 32 gigs media. Oh, okay, but I don't have one, so fix one. And then millions, the company's losing millions, and then they're dealing with this. Yeah. Oh wait, hold on. I have to borrow it from someone. Hey, everybody, do you have an? I'm like, oh my god. Yeah. And then this is basically the evidence collection, and you will be surprised in what kind of companies this is happening in a big brand. So the problem is that this is one of the trends that we kind of picked for the upcoming year, that the incident response plan should be not only well established, but it should be well tested, well prepared, including the team. And what is also quite interesting about that, and let me make one comment before we move forward, is that the team is also important, because people that are participating in the incident response, they have to be ready, responsive. They have to have good communication skills. In general, they have to be prepared. So the point is that for that customer that I was mentioning, with that story of the ransomware, would you believe that when there was like 3 p.m., they were just like almost on exit. 3 p.m., they were going home. Because they have to pick up the kids, important stuff. Not that kids are not important, but, there's an incident, so maybe we could do something about it. And they were literally leaving the company. They had no priority about that. And then literally there was a moment when we were all laughing with my guys, that we were in the room just by ourselves. There was nobody in this company. If we could smash it, we could do it possibly. There was like literally not a single soul from the IT team, from them. They were just consultants left to fix the trash, and then they were coming back in the morning. Oh, not fixed yet? Oh no, yeah. So, so this was quite surprising, and also a little bit demotivating, because participating in the incident brings the adrenaline. You need to love it, and definitely that's something that I personally adore. I'm probably a bit of an adrenaline junkie sometimes. It's like, hey, there's an incident. Not that someone suffers on the other side, yes, but at least there's a job that's interesting. When we look into the statistics that are also presented by some other companies, like for example FBI, but also IBM, this is a very similar thing. This is from the James Comey, former FBI director. This guy, very nice guy by the way, he says that hackers are sitting in the infrastructure for over 200 days before they are discovered. So that's quite a large number. I would say it's quite positive, actually, because at least we know it's 200 days, which means someone discovered that, so that's a success. Yeah, let's think about it this way. But of course, 200 is a lot. What does it mean? It means that companies, when we get in after the incident, they don't have, for example, process tracking. And process tracking is such a simple capability that we have right now. For example, when we've got either Sysmon, or when we've got a Defender for endpoints, and so on. So we are already monitoring processes that are executing over there. So we can even have like a basic built-in Windows process tracking, which already tells us what kind of processes we're running. Yes? So that's just to build a full attack picture and do some logic on the top of that. Now, another part is identity. So when, for example, this is very much a case when we are logging on somewhere, even as a user or as an admin, that privileged identity still seems to be not managed. And we don't really know, or on the infrastructure side, people don't really know, oh, there is this administrator's account being taken over. Maybe not a domain admin, but maybe some local admin on the server. If we do reuse credentials, do we monitor that flow, and so on? Yeah? So that's the point of identity being also overused a little bit. And you can see that there's an 80 days after detection to full recovery, which is quite serious. And this was literally the case of our customers, the one that I was mentioning. And another one that we are working quite recently with is actually a government. It's a ministry of, let's say, something around transportation from one of the countries. They were completely smashed. We spent over there over 2 months on site recovering them. So that's pretty much 80 days. And that was just the beginning of the job. Yeah, because as it appeared, they were not really controlling privileged access, and there were just a little bit too many domain admins in their infrastructure, not only their domain admins, yes, but also they were completely smashed, and there was like a personal information leaking, horrible situation. You will not see it in the news, of course, but yeah, that's not a very nice situation. And it was not in the Netherlands, yeah. So here we go. When we look into attack services, we might be thinking, okay, why is it popular right now? Why hackers are actually doing it? And answer to this one is very simple. When we look into the average salary of a hacker, nowadays it is approximately $90,000 per month. So it's a lot. It's a very lucrative business that is just worth stepping into. Even though I don't have a job, I will think, oh, I'm going to learn a little bit of programming. I'm going to go to the dark web. I'm going to invest some money, buy some core for ransomware, send a successful phishing campaign. Let's say 200,000 people. Let's just a couple of people pay, and here we go. Yeah. So long story short, you can see that we have a concept of a load, and that is very interesting because that concept of a load, as you can see here, means that this is nothing but a compromised PC or a mobile device that is actually to be used temporarily or on a permanent basis by a hacker to deliver the attack. So this is how much it costs hacker to gain a compromised device. Not much. Now, what can we do from that? That could be our attack base, or that could be as well part of the bot network. Yeah? But when we go into the further research, we can see that denial of service nowadays it's also not very expensive. We've got also the different proxy services, ransomware. Either you pay $66 upfront, or basically you give a 30% of a profit. So this is kind of like an affiliate model right now that you could also step into. Spear phishing is interesting. We can see that it's from $100 to $1,000 per successful account takeover. So it depends really whether we are hunting for a big fish or not. And you can see that compromised accounts are also quite easy, because that means that someone is just sampling different portals, different services for known passwords, and then basically gets them into the list. And this is something that, as you can see, you pay $1 per 1,000 accounts, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be successful accounts ratio. Normally, it's like from 0.1% up to even 20% of the username and password pair to be actually valid. So still not too bad when we are thinking about what can we do. So the question is, after all of that, what are our key challenges, knowing that we have so many attacks, and what are the strategic opportunities? First of all, we're learning that identity-based attacks, they are up by 300% this year, which means that we need to figure out something around our identity protection. Of course, MFA, it's a classic, but also, for example, things related with the conditional access, privileged access management, and so on. We've got also information protection, so simply data leaking. Also, we got the case of the detection, so just to summarize. And eventually, we've got also the case of an integration, so the possibility to evaluate the tools that people are actually using. And truly, this is actually a bit of a problem, because how many people can use their OneDrive within the company? Yeah, we know the drill. How many people can use like a portable signed apps? Yeah, they're signed, they are trusted, so maybe they can use them. So this is, of course, the case as well of a whitelisting. And whenever we are thinking about the tools that we have to manage, then and integrate at some point, then this is also a challenge, and we're going to be also talking about that. So, long story short, when we think about the intelligence, and this is also one of our challenges, and one of the priorities, there's a couple of things to think about. First of all, whenever we are thinking, and we mentioned the forensic and so on, we need to automatically defend against emerging threats and gain forensic skill. So this is the challenge and the priority for upcoming time. Why do we think so? Because of our experience. We see that every single time there is a problem, it's truly a big problem. It's not just that the company contacts us and says, hey, we've been attacked, would you mind reviewing whether we made a good steps and so on. Maybe they are well prepared, but in vast majority of cases, we see that simply they are not. Therefore, what I would love to show you, it's just simply a couple of things related with the possibility to discover about what has executed in the organization and what can we simply do about it. What kind of possibilities in general we have. First of all, whenever we are thinking about the a simple attack, and let me just do a little bit of a demo. In this demo, we're going to actually show what could happen if just simply a document with malicious macros is open. So this is a pretty simple demo just to start up, and we're going to be here just opening a document, and this is how vast majority of the threats are coming in. Of course, Microsoft, as we know, plans to disable macros, but that's a future thing. So at that point, we just need to deal with the macro case. And the user will just enable editing, so not that much of a big deal. Then there might be information within the pop-up or not. Yeah, so it depends. User will say no. Yeah, to this one's like no, and user is happy because eventually things did not happen, but it was just a matter of escalation that we did not really have to go through, because at the end we've got a ransomware. Yeah, that is actually the data, of course, here being encrypted, and then question is what do we do next? Yeah, so in this case, it's like send $300 worth of Bitcoin to this address. Yeah, so this is a very simple case. Now, question is, how can we actually detect this, and how can we monitor where did this actually come from? Well, there are many options. First of all, what would be important is what kind of processes were here running, yeah, and therefore for that we've got simply the concept of CM. And within CM, and this is what I would love to show you, we've got a possibility to discover not only the processes being executed, but also we are able to put them in the context. So let's do the presentation a little bit in the enterprise way, and then we're gonna do the one level down in order to extract information from that particular situation. So what do we have? So we've got simply the Microsoft 365 Defender, where we can go to the incidents and others, and we can just have a look into the generic summary of an incident. And this is the summary of our incident. So we've got over there ransomware being discovered. There's a WannaCrypt, yeah, as you see, but there's a couple of other things. Suspicious modification for the registry, local emails collected, Mimikatz credential theft tool, suspicious RDP session, suspicious sequence of exploration activity. So quite a lot of events, of course, around it, which sometimes may not even tell us anything. But what is important for me when I, for example, jump to the projects like this, is to build a full attack picture. And that is not possible if we don't have enough data. So it's all about that. So we can get into, of course, more of an information related with this particular incident. We can go to alerts, and you can see that we've got, of course, that WannaCrypt that is interesting, particularly for us. So we can get into details about what's going on. Of course, operating system processes, but at least we can see the process tree. So over there, you can see that here we've got WinWord, we've got a PowerShell underneath that executed a script. PowerShell, of course, it's also one of the tools that should not be communicating over the network. So that's the case of a configuration of the firewall. And we can see as well more details about maybe even a script, commands. If we have like a transcripting turned on, then basically we will be able to also see what's going on inside. Now, if we go to the further details, over there, you can see that that for this multi-stage incident, when we go to alerts once again, we can get into more of an items. Yeah. So here you've got investigations, and we've got Mimikatz credential theft tool, and again we can get into the investigation page, for example, and then we can learn more about the executable that was there. So long story short, we've got here different entities analyzed. You've got like different entities found for the evidence. So we've got also the automatic evidence collection. And for that, you can, for example, download the mimikatz.exe to investigate. Of course, it's Mimikatz, it's known, but here we are speaking about also things that are not known. So here, what we got inside, this is the part within the Sentinel. You can go, of course, to the incident if that data is imported within the Sentinel, and you can get into a little bit more efficient management of the same incident, and you can, of course, see that that is actually one of the incidents that we got. Credential access. We've got also here the details that we can get into. We can see again the process tree. We can analyze the processes that were executing underneath. That there was a PowerShell and so on. So that's basically the setup. And we can go into, for example, local emails collected. You can also see that that actually came, for example, from phishing. Yeah, so we can analyze what exactly that was this. Of course, this doesn't have to be recognized, but at the end, we can see that particularly for this one, it was a WannaCrypt, and we can see, of course, the full context of that, yeah? So maybe not that exciting, but it gives you the overview about what was going on so that you can get into the further details, and at the end, you've got the full analysis of what was happening, yes? So you've got also different alert status, and this is the possibility that we can have to investigate anything that was simply executing over there. So if we are thinking about more intelligence further on, yeah, we have talked about the recognition of the attack. But of course, it's not everything. For the fact that we got that discovered, it doesn't mean that we know what happened. Yeah. So question is there any kind of operating system capability, for example, that we could leverage to extract data from that OS? And answer is yes, there is. And there are truly three basic things that we should reconsider here. One thing is prefetch, which is actually not that much detailed, but it's a great solution that works for us as a backup. And if you're thinking, oh, that's a little bit too much for me, or maybe this is in our budget for the next couple of months, question is, what do we do today to monitor what's going on? And if you are thinking about implementing something overnight, enabling prefetch is at least something that we can do in order to give us more information about what's going on. What is prefetch? Prefetch in general, it is simply a mechanism that allows us to monitor things for performance. It's more like, I'm going to monitor historically what you are actually executing, and based on that history that you just generated, in the morning, next time when you're going to be running, let's say, Photoshop, I'm going to run that stuff to the memory for you so that it's going to be faster. So this is in general prefetch. Let's say we don't need it right now, but because our performance is good, but prefetch has this side effect of monitoring anything that was executing. Prefetch, I'll tell you, helped me a lot many times in the project to understand what happened. For example, we had a customer in the finance sphere. There was actually a really funny case because there was a lady named Sophie, very nice one, by the way. I like her a lot, but she is hyperactive. She's a person that's like on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok probably today, on like Snapchat. She's like everywhere. And she's socializing. She knows when you get your divorce. She knows when you got like, you know, your birthday. That's just like basic. Yeah, so she knows the stuff. So she's like super happy person. And what she did, she, in the traders sphere, this is a finance organization as I mentioned, she actually opened a document. She got an email, and the email was stating, hey, someone left you a voice message on a Dropbox. So she was like, oh, that's awesome. Someone left me a voice message on a Dropbox, because this is normally how we communicate. We leave each other voice messages on a Dropbox, yeah? That's what we do. So basically she was like, okay, so let's just get in. And this was a literally, voice message.wave.exe. Yeah? And you can imagine what happened, yeah? So the whole organization was encrypted, and then they were calling and they were like, oops, we got a problem, yeah? And I was like, okay, I'm coming, let's see, let's figure out. And they were trying to figure out when did this come from? And the problem was that they did not have in place monitoring solutions that could tell them, but the prefetch, luckily, it's by default turned on the Windows client. Unfortunately, it's not turned on by default on Windows servers. And we always recommend our customers to turn it on. It's just like one registry key that you have to change. And the prefetch is there. Performance-wise, it's not of an issue. It just does good stuff. So basically, if you don't have a prefetch enabled on servers, do that, because this will give potentially a backup response to the potential incident. And if you wonder how the story ended, of course, they were all encrypted. The traders' documents, they were encrypted and so on. Luckily, it did not spread too much, and they managed to recover, so that was actually quite okay. But when we think about prefetch itself, let me, of course, show you a bunch of things there. And I would love to show you also the other concepts about prefetch. So please have a look. Prefetch itself just simply is in the C Windows prefetch. So this is, of course, where the client has turned on prefetch, and you can see exactly anything that executes. So this is also quite straightforward. So I'm just going to open Notepad, whatever, and that would just give me an update that Notepad is running. Of course, it takes a moment while the prefetch is created, but that should be coming in, and here we go. We've got a Notepad that just came in. So anything that is running is going to leave a trace over there. That's not just really the only one. So that's one of the three options that I've mentioned, yeah? So here we've got this. Of course, we can analyze how many times Notepad was running. If malware was called Notepad, and that's what I would do if I would be evil, then basically it's going to be just another Notepad here on the list, which is also an unusual situation. So I'm going to go to this console here. Let me just interrupt this, and here we go. And we're going to go to Tools, and here we got CQ Prefetch Parser minus file for the file. Okay. I did not copy the path. Okay, let me just do it again. So copy as path. So let's see. CLS once again, and then paste. Okay, that's better. And we've got -A for the analysis. And you can see out there that we've got a possibility to monitor the history of execution as well. What will be characteristic for malware is that malware is going to run once. Usually, yeah? Unless user is like crazy running malware, but probably that will not happen. So if the malware is coming from inside of Excel, for example, or like we were demonstrating Word, then basically you will see here that there is this PowerShell that was executing, yeah? And you can see the date. Date is already important because you can correlate it. Can you trust the date? No, but sometimes we don't have a choice. Yeah, and let me talk about it in a second. So first, here we've got last executed. You can see, of course, what kind of DLLs are loaded inside. You can see sometimes the file names, paths, and so on. So prefetch in general, it's like a little bit of a cache. And again, it doesn't hurt you, so totally useful stuff. And on the Sophie's computer, in her prefetch folder, I was able to find over there the voice message.wave. Yeah, so this is how we knew that that actually started from her because of a date over that. So that's one of the cases. Now, another case is, of course, that date that I've mentioned. The problem is that when we think about what different tools are gathering, they're not gathering the information from the USN Journal. And whether we talk about Sysmon or we talked about Sentinel, Defender, and so on, they are relying their data on the metadata of the file, either a time for an incident, but if you analyze the file itself, if you gather the file, then that file will be described in the way as it describes in a system, which is, of course, with that particular metadata. So the problem is that we cannot trust metadata, so just have this in mind, because the monitoring tools will not always give us an accurate statement over there. And therefore, I would love to show you a pretty straightforward situation with that demo. So over there, we've got a folder data, yeah? And within this folder, you can see that all of the files are the 1st of January 2010. Now, what normally is happening within the attack, and that's very normal, almost like happens every time. For that customer that I was mentioning with the ransomware, hackers were actually sitting for 3 weeks in the infrastructure. And the point was that they actually uploaded some remote control tools, and these tools were dating back from like 2 years ago. So if you were searching forensically by the metadata, show me all the last files that were dropped over there within the past month, you would just simply not see these tools. What are we talking about here? So here we've got like 4.txt, and that is something that we've got here, like the fake data, for example. So what we're going to do, simply we're going to save it. And you can see that for that one, for some reason, it did not refresh. Oh, now it refreshed. We've got the 7th of October, yeah? Okay, fair point, because what we can do now, we can actually edit this by just getting into the simply the analysis of the metadata here. So first of all, just to show you the difference, that we've got over here the 998 files that are the same and one that stands out. That's just this 4.txt. Okay, now good part is that if we do the last write time, you can see that, of course, that file also stands out. But interesting factor about that is that within the forensic situations, we need to know all these little details that, for example, if it's about the metadata, we can not only get it, but we can also set it. So that means that we can just change it. So why don't we just take a sample, 1.txt last write time, and for every item in this folder, we're going to overwrite last write time. If it's not as 1st of January 2010, we're going to overwrite creation time, last write time, and last access time at the same time. So this is just a simple command in PowerShell, which please observe the 4.txt marked in gray on the left. Once we just run it, then basically this will, let me just refresh it for the folder, this will just change to the 1st of January back again, yeah? So don't rely on this. Yeah, never do that, because metadata is also commonly changed. But of course, just to be precise, when we are investigating that file, it's going to look like it's the 1st of January 2010, which of course has also a possibility for verification. How do we do that? We use the fsutil US Unread journal on the E drive to actually get that information. That takes a while, and I'm doing this on the sample drive, not on the operating system drive, because if you would extract this data, it's going to take like 10 minutes to extract it, and if you stream it to the text file, it's going to be from like 1 to 2 gigs of data. So it's quite a lot, yeah. So of course nobody wants to put it in a Sentinel or any other place because it's quite a lot of data. But what is important is that all these CM systems, all these monitoring solutions, don't forget, it's very cool, but when it comes to an incident, it's not helpful 100% to investigate it. Not 100%. Of course, it's super helpful, but it's not like 100%. So you really want to get to that workstation and extract the journal. Journal, it's not really gathered centrally anywhere. If you can do it, that's awesome. But please encounter that for every workstation, you will need to save at least 1 gig of data. So 50,000 workstations, blah, blah, blah. Maybe we can afford that, maybe not, yeah. So here we go. But my point is that here, you can see that there has been indeed basic info change. Now let me show you this because it's also very logical. So we've got, first of all, for.txt, data override, data truncation close. Yes, because I changed the content. That updated metadata, basic info change to the current date. And then we've got a follow-up of a basic info change. So that is the logic that we need to apply. And tell me, what kind of solution nowadays can pick this data? That's my point. So we need to always put some intelligence into it, and our team needs to be capable to investigate what's going on. Example. There are so many examples about that. Approximately a month ago, probably like 3 weeks ago, I was investigating a hack into a telecom. And what it appeared is that one of the servers that were internet-facing were not patched in time, and hackers managed to get in. Yeah, so that's just a long story short. And they were, at that point, Cloudflare actually told them that, hey, you know, like it looks like from your network, actually, there is some dodgy traffic going on, investigate that. And they were like, oh, shoot, it must be this server. And they put it down, and then the traffic stopped. Well, so, okay, logically, let's jump into the problem. And what it appeared is that through that vulnerability that they had, hackers managed to get in, and there was lots of Python scripts that were executed on that server that were there, but then later on they were deleted. So when you get into the workstation, it's all clean. Yeah? So how do we know nowadays that there was this big block of files that were simply deleted? Because they could be permanently deleted. Someone could clean out that space, because when we got 2 ways of deleting a file, as we know, yeah? We can delete the pointer to the file, or we can delete the file permanently, so clean the space that's underneath. So long story short, this could have been permanently deleted. And how do we know that? Well, the only way to figure it out that this workstation has been under attack, or this server, was actually to go through the journal. So this is how we learned that, yes, it's this. And the background was that they become actually a part of the bot network. So this was actually quite interesting as well. And the scripts were actually originating from China. And that was just my evaluation, which could be many, of course, situations, but it kind of looked like that they actually became the target of maybe some of the Chinese hacker groups, yeah? So quite a fun story. Isn't it exciting always, yeah, to see this kind of things? Yeah, and put it into a little bit of politics as well. Oof, then give me that. Okay, anyway, so we've got this. And of course, the last part that is absolutely good over there is to look into something that we call a structured storage viewer, and that is basically the tool. That is a really nice one. It's free, by the way, so you can also use it. And what's my point? My point is that over here, let me just show you the path from now on. We've got a C users, Paula, update, roaming, Microsoft Windows recent item, automatic destinations. This is not something that you turned on. This is something that you have. So you want it or not, you have it. Now, what do you have over there? You have over here quite a lot of files. You can see they're not that big, but these files are representing every application that you run. So whatever you run leaves there a mark. And that's awesome, because if we are thinking, if we don't have today process tracking, and if we don't know that the problem came from phishing, what you want to do, you want to go to the user's profile and verify the entry for Outlook, the entry for Excel, for Word, and so on, and verify what kind of documents people opened. What's my point? Is that we can get actually here, 9B, 9C, 9B, 9C, here we go. I'm just going to use this one maybe. It's quite a large one too. And what do we have over there? It's simply a notepad. And within this entry, we can get information that, let me just make it full screen, that we've got, for example, opened bunch of files. For example, I was playing with volatility and I was extracting DLLs from one of the memory dumps into the file called dlllist.txt. So in other words, everything you open, everything you run, anything, it's in automatic destinations. And if you opened some document 2 years ago, that's going to be there till today. Yes, it's a whole history. So if you got an employee that was like, opening something maybe even in an unauthorized way, then you could just jump in over there and see whether that could be potential source of your data leak. Actually, we found a situation, why I'm saying this, because we actually had a case with the customer where there was a data leaking from their company. There was an employee that was selling data to the competitor. And we were like, okay, who is working on the data? Let's bring some context all together. And it appeared that there was a person who was actually doing that. Of course, this person got fired. But an interesting fact was that in this person automatic destination, we could find here entries proving that this file has been opened. Can you put it into the court? No. Well, it is helping evidence, but this is not really an evidence, or it cannot play, unfortunately, a legal evidence because it's not digitally signed and it is in the user's profile. So user could also change it. So just saying that like the context of this is bad, so it's more for you to know what was potentially happening over there. Automatic destinations, everybody has this, yeah? So if you ever open something that you don't want anybody to see, you basically may want to delete this. And another story proving the point is that, unfortunately, we were analyzing the case of, sorry about the subject, but it's a fact, a childhood pornography. And there was a guy that was potentially doing these things, and his computer was confiscated, and our job was to analyze the drive for the court to give some data about what's going on. And over there, within the Windows Media Player entry, we could find also titles that were indicating that this video was containing that kind of a content. Yeah, so also quite interesting. So you can see that forensic capability is quite important. We are learning more about what's going on. The more we know, the better we are able to prepare to the upcoming threats. But that's not everything. Another part that I was also making the point about is the privileged access. And in general, the way how we manage it, the way how we use it, and the way how we perceive it. Because when we think about our credentials as well, so when, for example, people are logging on to our business applications and so on, we all know that multi-factor authentication is the must. So I'm not really making that point around that, because this is obvious. But question is, how do we perceive it? And what I would love to show you is a little bit twisted demo where we're going to actually bypass multi-factor authentication and make the point about more of a workstation security than the MFA itself. So let's have a look. What do we have over here? It's simply Evil Jinx. And within the Evil Jinx, which is a common stuff to use for phishing activities and so on, we've got here a URL, so Lurus, get URL, and then we've got 0, which is login teams microsoftonline.com.co, and the link. Yeah, it's a little purple, but you will get the point in a moment. So here, when we get basically into that link, you can see that it's just like a regular, Microsoft login page. But there's a bit of a problem because Microsoft doesn't have the website like this. It's microsoftonline.com. not .co. We actually bought SEO, our team did it, and we bought a certificate for it as well. So it's a great website for phishing. So Abby comes in, Abby logs in, Here we go. And there's a request for the multi-factor authentication, so approve sign-in request, so Abby does this. And then the next part is, of course, to redirect Abby into the original website. Yeah, so we've got a login microsoftonline.com. So this is an original one. And Abby's going to be like, oh, something went wrong. Yeah. But the problem is that, of course, we've got a username and a password, which is like obvious. But then what is interesting is that we also have all authorization tokens intercepted. So if we go to sessions, yeah, then we're going to specify the session ID. This part that you see on the screen, it's nothing but the authorization token for the multi-factor authentication. So we can actually leverage this. It's a very similar attack to the past, the PRT token, but of course on the MFA. So we go to the portaloffice.com. Let's sign in, of course, as our Abby, but this time not by specifying the username and the password, but by specifying a token. So let's take this guy. So here we go. And we're going to put this guy into the cookies. So first we're going to clean this. Yep, so let's do it. And then we're going to import the cookie into our browser so that we'll be able to log in with this one. So then we just like go check and refresh. And this is how we simply bypass MFA. And thank you. And we are able to be Abby. Yeah, so as simple as this. Where's the problem? Yeah, where's the problem? Okay, who has a cigarette? No, just kidding. So where's the problem? The problem is, of course, in the way how we manage workstations, security, because of course we should see here MFA as one of the items that secure us. And I'm probably saying some obvious things right now, but when we look at the security, we should in a very mature way, look at it as different layers, right? And these layers are today very granular. In the past, it was like firewall, antivirus, this, that, yeah? And that's it. And right now we have so many solutions to manage and so many things to monitor. And the problem is that every single time we monitor and we implement some change, like MFA, for example, question is, does MFA solve our authentication problems? In some kind of a way, yes. But if the hacker manages to get access to the user's workstation and we have still MFA, forget about the MFA. It's already too late. Why I'm saying this? Because it's a kind of a myth thinking that, oh, even though hacker manages to get access to users' workstations and extracts users' credentials, yeah, we can still not log in because we've got an MFA anyhow. Yeah? No. It's a case of a token. And what is worse, this is also a method of persistency. I'm very much interested in today's methods of persistency because question is regarding this 200 days of hackers staying in infrastructure, what do they do to hide? And it's not that it's like super intelligent stuff, yes? It's like we've got things like scheduled tasks, we've got like WMI and so on. So it's all known, yes? It's an operating system is from A to Z, so there is nothing like rocket science. It's just that we have to monitor it all today, and that's a bit of a problem. And this is just demonstrating, in general, the need of using conditional access. Because if hacker manages to steal that token, I'm just going to take it and I'm going to go with this token to my computer and log in as Abby from my computer. Yeah, because what's my interest logging on as Abby from the Abby's computer? I'm there already, yeah, so it's not a problem. But I need to search for that persistency from the outside, and that creates an anomaly that we need to encounter. And was this our problem in the past? Yes, it's just that there were less attacks. And that's basically what we are dealing with. So just a little bit of a concept. Good. So once, of course, hacker manages to get access to the workstation, then we've got a need, and that's also one of our priorities that are to be refought at some point, is that managing devices. Now, I would say one statement here, that based on what we see, there's nothing more important nowadays than managing identity and managing workstation security. All the attacks, in vast majority of cases, are coming through phishing. There's like over 60% of attacks coming through phishing. And again, we've got a macro, we've got a link, we've got something to execute, and then the user falls for it. I don't know. So companies are writing that they're going to send us free gifts, for example. Yeah, and users going to be like, yeah? And the problem is ready, yeah? So we have to be preventing against that, and there's actually a nice way of doing it. This is the solution that I would call a dream came true, because if IT people have some dreams, in IT, of course, one of my dreams, I had 2 dreams and they are completed right now, was to have a efficient anti-exploitation prevention on the Windows platform. That was one of my dreams. You can see how not romantic I am, yes? Not like going to Hawaii or something, yes, but please, like anti-execution prevention on Windows, please. So that actually is there because we got an exploit guard. And the second part is that, that would be so awesome to have something that could automate this predictable situations around phishing. So user starts something, there is a child process, or we can have the same story running the code from the inside of Excel, which is Win32 API calls. Oh my God, this is as old as this world. And it was not managed till, of course, Microsoft introduced the automatic destinations. And if we get into the Windows components, you can configure this through PowerShell or through group policy, and we can go to the Defender Endpoint Exploit Guard, and then we've got the attack surface reduction, and we can specify particularly the policy. Over here, as you can see, we can just have it enabled, and we can specify the policy IDs. And these policies IDs are coming from the website, for example. We can put on different codes over there. So for example, here, you can see that we've got the attack surface reduction rules, and we can specify things like block abuse exploited vulnerable signed drivers, or block credential stealing from the Windows local security to subsystem. By the way, that can be bypassed, but at least it minimizes the risk, yeah? But what is really cool is that block process creations originating from psexec, WMI commands, yeah? So this is one of the options. Or another option, we can do the same story, for example, for the child process. Yeah? So we just specify that value 1, and 1 is, of course, for blocking. And the second policy that, of course, we can get them all. We just need to verify whether that will not break our apps. And then here we go. We've got a Win32 API calls from Office macros. Yeah, so also very cool setting that also allows us to prevent running till today and evading antivirus solution of running the code from the inside of Excel. Yeah, so this is what we call run PE. So we've got over there so our ABI, GP update, and then force. And that is basically running on the Abyss Guy computer. And then after the policy is updated, completed successfully, we will be able to test it. Yeah, so that's basically the case. Here we've got our Outlook, we've got a malicious attachment, yeah, and then we try to click on the content. So we've got here enable content. And then when we click, then of course, suspicious macros detected, yeah? So again, not that much exciting thing, but when we think about the logic behind it, yeah, then this is truly easy because it's always a child process or Win32 API calls. So how do we prevent that obvious thing? And that is very much nicely covering the pattern. And of course, whenever we are thinking about some other cases, just a review of the different apps that we are facing the internet, because that also proven a point during the pandemic that when we needed access to the applications that were our business apps, some of the companies were publishing them. We know the drill, this is an easy fact, and then at the end we're able to exploit them. So, summarizing, infrastructure level to do. Maintaining always a good security mindset in our employees. That always helps because we need to make sure that people are supporting our cybersecurity ideas. Enabling multi-factor authentication whenever we can, of course, but with the conditional access. Making sure, of course, that we are addressing things like phishing. Thinking about how do we actually access our network, so the network isolation with the different applications that we are using. When we think about the future challenges, of course, cybersecurity is a cost, so we have to plan it well. And cybersecurity skill set is so hard to scale that we have to automate it somehow. Plan it in advance, because the problem will never stop. Like, it's just like becoming a bigger problem in cybersecurity right now. We have to have some automation on site. unfortunately or fortunately, yeah? So, but definitely there needs to be more monitoring and a team that is at least on-site monitoring what is executing and addressing these problems. Trust relationship with a vendor, exactly. Please verify also the dependencies that you got. This is the problem I was mentioning before, meaning that if we do use various vendors, then what kind of level of dependency there is, and if this vendor disappears, how much of a problem you're going to have, and how do we address it? So summaries, 2023, we call it a well-written and well-tested incident response plan year. We like to call it a cyber crisis management plan. Calling it like this causes a higher budget for that, because management likes to hear cyber crisis management thing. Seriously, this is really funny. When we were saying incident response to our customer, they were like, nah, maybe we will take it. And we were like, well, you know, if you're not managing the cyber crisis, and they're like, what? Managing what? So just a thought, because we kind of saw it works. It's a simple thing, I know, but it totally helps it. Companies should revise goals of their pen tests. Why? Because we do pen tests to check ourselves, but the problem is that later on we've got what? Minimize risks, some report, more work. But we should look at the pen test as if it was a tool to analyze our identity. So, for example, let's do a pen test as a user. Let's do a pen test as this user role, as application user, and so on, in order to verify what are the possible paths, but in a little bit more efficient ways. Pen tests are quite often starting from nothing. And what will be important is that once the hacker gets into, through phishing, to the user's computer, what will be the pathway to get into the infrastructure. Cybersecurity awareness trainings are very much a trend right now, especially covering the remote work, and they should reference personal life. We've got lots of experience about it. I'll be happy, of course, to share it if you will have any questions, but that is a great momentum for people that are not tech savvy to get into cybersecurity. And of course, any kind of defense always requires long-term planning. So we should always have that strategy going on and planning going on for cybersecurity, because new solutions are popping up, new threats are there, and monitoring is a key to success. And at the end, that's what we said, that workstation security and identity security are one of the top priorities right now. So the question is, what do we do about that? And just to make you feel more comfortable, I'm not doing the QR code anymore. Here is a regular link, yeah, so you can type it and then test it later if you wish. So here we go. This is where you are able to download our tools, especially the ones that I'm presenting on the presentations. And as always, looking forward to seeing you as well on our blog. And over there you can find also quite a lot of videos about how to get access somewhere. Did you learn something today? Did you enjoy it? Yeah, okay, good. So, wishing you a fantastic day. Thank you so much for the participation, your time, and see you later on the technical sessions. Thanks a lot and have a great day.